All right. Good afternoon, everyone. On this, it's a Sunday afternoon in January. It's warm some places, cold others. And just like TikTok, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold. You know, what's going to happen? I don't know. And that's what you're going to see. There's going to be a lot of I don't know and uncertainty, and maybe some of what we're working on here is dealing with that uncertainty and how it affects us and our emotions. In fact, Stasha, do you mind if I do just a quick little mindfulness thing when we?
No, I think that's a great idea.
All right. So look, you're awake, you're alive, whether you're here live, whether you're on the recording, whether you're on Facebook, on Zoom, you're okay. So much of this feels like a threat when these confusing things happen. When it affects our social community, it feels like a little death, right? When it affects our business, it feels like a little death. Those of us small business owners, right? So, how does our lizard brain react when it feels like a little death, right? Where do we go? We want to fight, we want to flight, we want to freeze. We don't have to, we're safe. But he's okay. Everything's going to be okay, right? There may be challenges and hurdles ahead, or there may not. That's all right. Whatever comes out, you can deal with. You got this. You're going to figure it out. You're going to learn the lessons you need to learn. You're going to move on. Oh, yes. Perfect. Thank you, Stasha. And everything's going to be fine. All right. So just stay present. This is why some of us, Stasha, we love Stasha and I, we love puppies and kitties, don't we? We love puppies and kitties. What are they always reminding us of? When you look at your puppies and kitties, what are they teaching you and reminding you of at any moment, Stasha?
Being very present
Yes,
in the moment.
present in the moment. For them, there's no tomorrow and there's no yesterday. There's only now and there's only loving and being loved. That's all there is for them, right? So you've got this. You can do this. All right. Hopefully everybody's okay. Stasha, do you want to add anything to that? Yeah.
No, I think that's it's a good reminder. We have take a breath and remember there are options.
Yeah, there are options. There are always options. And you have food in your belly and a roof over your head. And there are a billion people in the world who don't have that right now, right? So it's funny. These problems, these things that to us feel like a little death, are problems that lots of people would kill to have. So this is all solvable. We're going to figure it out. We're going to do it together. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move over to some slides. Let's talk about TikTok a bit here. So what we're going to talk about, what does the TikTok legislation actually say and require? I think we're going to do some of this background for a good reason. There's so many folks who don't understand how we got here today. I'm a former government lawyer, so I've been steeped in this stuff for years now, right? But if you haven't been following it closely, you may not know how we got here, which makes the whole thing even more confusing and threatening. So let's understand how we got to today. And that's going to help us why today is still a little bit uncertain and we don't know what's yet going to happen. Then we're going to talk about the current legal and political situation. And Stasha, if you have any questions or comments, please just do it. Right. What's the current legal and political situation? And what might happen beginning today. As you've already seen today, things are changing already, right? We're already looking at uncertainty today. And where does it go in the coming weeks and months? The answer is I don't know, but there are some possible outcomes that we'll look at. And then how does this affect your business and clients? Because ultimately, it's nice to understand how we got here because it's hard to move forward if you don't know how we got here. You have to know the situation, but then you have to move forward. If you use TikTok, if your clients use TikTok, or even if you're involved in the transformational industry at all, there's going to be a ripple effect here. And we all have to understand this and figure out how to move forward together. And that's regardless of whether you approve of the ban, don't approve of it, what your opinion is. That's just the reality.
It also doesn't matter if you use TikTok because the impact is going to be felt depending on what happens, even if you've never so much as downloaded the app.
No, I totally agree. 'Cause personally, I don't use it for my own reasons, but I have clients who do, and so I'm already getting questions today,
Yeah.
and their clients use it. So let's do this background. What does the actual TikTok legislation say and require? And I will say we like to use the. I'll probably keep using it today again. We use the term TikTok ban. I put that in air quotes. Okay. It is not literally a TikTok ban. That is the colloquial phrase we've been using to describe a much more complex situation. But even the Supreme Court, in its recent opinion, they were fine. They were like, yeah, the effect of it is to kind of sort of ban the app. So even the Supreme Court was like, fan, we'll just call it the TikTok ban for shorthand because you don't want it to say the TikTok legislation that does X, Y, Z, you know. So fine, we'll call it TikTok ban, even if that is an imprecise description of what's legally going on. So to understand the legislation, we have to understand about TikTok's ownership structure a little bit because there's a lot of confusion. And even Stasha, you pointed out one of your posts, there's nobody seems to know, right, who owns TikTok, or at least not in the common parlance, right? So
And in fact, who's built TikTok from the beginning is
who
another
built it and
bit.
where it came from, right? So, and this, even this, I'm going to give you this simplified. TikTok's ownership structure is stunningly complicated. If you look into the legal briefing in the court cases, I could make pages and pages of giant flow charts. It's a very complicated ownership structure. So I just everybody know I've tried to break it down because I don't want to bore you guys. To me, I find it fascinating, but I'm a legal nerd, right? So I'm breaking this down to be just the very basics. I've skipped lots of intermediate steps here, just so you all know. Right. So we have ByteDance turns out to be the key company. We keep talking about TikTok, but the actual target of the law is ByteDance. TikTok is, in a sense, a collateral damage to the law that targets ByteDance. It's just that TikTok is the one we're most familiar with. Most of us don't deal with ByteDance on a daily basis, but the target of the law is really ByteDance. You have ByteDance, which is a corporation, and these percentages are approximate. It flows up and down, right? It's roughly 60% owned by institutional investors, roughly 20% by its own employees who live around the world, and roughly 20% by Zhang Yiming, who is the founder of ByteDance. He's a Chinese national who lives in Singapore, I believe, Stasha, right? He's in Singapore now.
Well, the CEO of TikTok is not Chinese. He
Right,
is
just you're right. The CEO of TikTok America is definitely
right.
not Chinese. Yeah.
Right.
So Zhang Yimin is the 20%. No, so he's the largest single shareholder in ByteDance,
Mhm.
which becomes important because he's the Chinese national living in Singapore, and that's where some of this concern comes from. Now, ByteDance, they own lots of apps around the world. Apps in China, apps in the US, apps in Europe, you name it. They own hundreds of apps around the world. ByteDance is basically an app and website developer. Lots of social media, lots of content, lots of different stuff. They do a lot of interesting things. So they own hundreds of apps all around the world. They also own 100% of the company we call TikTok Inc. Now, again, that's simplified. There turn out to be several intermediate steps when I say that 100%, but ultimately they are the 100% owner of TikTok Inc. I'm skipping the intermediate companies. And those are kind of the key players in what are affecting both of us now. ByteDance is incorporated in the Caribbean. They're headquartered in the PRC. By PRC is shorthand for People's Republic of China, the formal name for the Chinese government. ByteDance owns the algorithm, and the algorithm is maintained and modified in the PRC. TikTok is a California company headquartered in California and operates only in the US. And it operates only the US version of TikTok. Remember, there's a worldwide version of TikTok, but TikTok Inc., the California company, is who operates the US version. So they actually have tried to create a corporate separation between the US version and the rest of the world. TikTok does not operate in China. They have a, what's it called? I forget the name. It starts with a D. Um, there is a TikTok clone that operates in China separately. I
Oh,
forget the name of it though. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, there's a couple different things though. There's Lemonade, which is also owned by ByteDance, that operates in the US and was never subject to this ban.
Lemonade, actually, you cannot download Lemonade anymore.
Oh, well, it's still working. So,
Oh, they didn't take down the app, but Apple and Android have stopped downloads of Lemonade because the law expressly applied to anything owned by ByteDance. TikTok is just a big name.
right. Yeah. And then there's Redbook in China, which is the Chinese, but it's not the TikTok equivalent. It's a different thing, but that's where everybody has been going to.
Right. Yes. No, there is another TikTok equivalent, and I can't remember the name. It starts with a D, and at least in the English transliteration. But yeah, the was it Red Book or Red?
Well,
That's a
technically, it's Little Red Book is the
oh
English
yes, which
translation. Yeah.
like as you pointed out, the irony.
Yeah.
Little Red Book. There are many people argue that it is an actual express propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party, which is why they called it Little Red Book. And people are flowing there, which is a huge irony here.
Yeah. Except that it is more like a combination of Pinterest and Instagram. It's almost the majority of its user is women. It was
Mm,
used originally by women to share recommendations for restaurants and to share recipes and cat pictures and videos, of course. And it has very little political anything on it.
right.
It's almost entirely used by women to share recommendations and ideas and tips and things. There's not actually that many men on the app.
Oh, interesting. So it sounds like it's a very different format from TikTok then.
It is a bit different. It does have the video, like the short form, long form video aspect to it, but it also has photos and actually in China it's used as a Google. And like instead of Google, you would go on
Oh,
to Redbook and look
right,
up something.
right. Because I don't think you can use Google in China, can you?
I don't know about Google. I know you can't use Facebook. My
Can't use
Chinese
Facebook,
students
right?
have always had to work around Facebook to join
Mhm.
school stuff, but yeah, one of the reasons we're moving off of Facebook.
There you go. Donna, thank you. Du Yin. That's right. I forgot. Du Yin is the Chinese clone of TikTok.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how again, that's the very simplified structure of a company that has hundreds of companies and sub companies. I've tried to break it down. So the quick history and how we got here. So President Trump tried to force ByteDance to sell TikTok or face a shutdown in August 2020. That's kind of when this started. President Trump first tried to do that. He did that by executive order. The courts very quickly overturned his executive order because there was no legislative authority for it. The president does not have the authority to just force that to happen absent legislation from Congress. So it was quickly overturned. So then we proceeded to years of negotiation and Stasha, as you know, massive money lobbying from all sides and all companies and stakeholders and people who love TikTok and people who hate TikTok and people who compete with it or people, I mean, then we went back and forth with years of lobbying in Congress.
And you should also note that around 2020, lots and lots of Congress people suddenly started buying Meta stock.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there.
Well, yeah, side note, I would love a constitutional amendment that banned members of Congress from investing in
Yeah.
stock while they're in office, or
And
at
in the
least forcing them to put it in a blind trust, which they are not now forced to do.
Yeah, and in the last about 4 months, since this really has come to a head, a lot of our Congress people have increased their Meta stock holdings or bought for the first time, and you can see the uptick in
Mm-hmm.
Congress buying Meta specifically.
Some of them have been buying Trump stock too.
Oh
Yeah, it's
yeah, not
it's
good.
the whole. We could do a whole separate day on that. That sort of thing is happening. Yeah. So finally, April 2024, Congress passed the TikTok legislation. So the actual legislation, what does it say? Because not many people are familiar with what it actually does and what it actually says. So first, it applies to any social media app that is owned, not just owned, but owned or controlled by a quote foreign adversary. And the term foreign adversary is narrowly defined to include only Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Does not include any other foreign nations, just those four. And a lot of you, if you read anything about foreign policy, you will not be surprised to see those four names included on it. In addition to that general broad rule, the legislation deems expressly that any app owned by ByteDance is subject to these rules, which is why I say it's really targeted at ByteDance. So they say ByteDance and the apps it owns are subject. So any app subject to this, it has to obtain US ownership by January 19th, 2025. Hooray, that's today. Or face various legal consequences that start kicking in. So what they were really trying to do is force ByteDance and any other similar foreign parent to divest themselves of these apps and sell them to US owners. If the app is not sold to US ownership by today, which it has not been, then here's what sort of rules kick in. You cannot get new downloads on app stores. You've already seen that, right? You've all seen the screenshots of Apple and Android. No new downloads of TikTok, Lemonade, or literally anything else owned by ByteDance. The American companies are being very conservative and they're blocking all ByteDance apps right now because they're just looking out for their own legal liability at this point. No new updates can be provided through the phones, right? Which means what? Slowly the app will die on the vine. Without updates and everything, it slowly dies. Glitches develop. This is why they update apps. No US servers can store the app's data, right? So that affects Amazon and Oracle and Microsoft and companies like that that have giant server farms. They cannot store the app's data in the US. Here's what the law does not require. So you'll notice the legislation itself, again, whether you agree with or not, was fairly carefully crafted to only apply to US companies on its face. It's only imposing requirements on US companies. Of course, it has the effect of, this is why we call it the TikTok ban. It has the sort of broad, imprecise effect of kind of banning TikTok and some other apps as well. What the law does not require, nobody is required to delete TikTok from your phone. So for those of you wondering, why is TikTok now working today? Because that's not against the law. That's legal. You are not prohibited from accessing the TikTok website on a computer. If you go to tiktok.com on your computer, it works now. It did not last night. It does now. TikTok is not required to shut down the app or the website. So why did the app and the website shut down last night? The law did not require that. ByteDance chose to do that. And I think, Stasha, did we talk about this before we started the recording and the live stream? Yeah, so do you want to get back into that just for a second?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think they did it?
Well, they're aware that they're going to be dealing with this fight with the Trump presidency. So I think that they very much made a political choice to stroke Trump's ego to put that shutdown message up that says we're working with President Trump to come to a solution. And I honestly think that it was a smart thing to do because he is a very ego-driven man. I mean, the reason he wanted to ban it in the first place is because people were talking mean about him on the app. So that was his original thing. And then this was a great way for them to stroke Trump's ego in order to hopefully move forward with the legislation in a positive way for them.
Right. So it was very timely for them. And they even did it earlier, right? They did it several hours earlier than they could have. So they wanted to shock the system and make a point. And then I also think that perhaps ByteDance didn't realize how much pushback they would get on the shutdown of the app. And they might have realized maybe it's in their best interest to let people, because if they let people get used to not having it on their phones anymore for a couple of weeks, everybody's moved on.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
But TikTok is the largest social media platform in the United States. It's
maybe even in the world.
Yes. But it doesn't matter because, as everyone on TikTok and other countries has been saying, they're just going to wait for us to get shut down so they can talk shit about America,
Right.
which is hilarious and also true. But it is the most effective form of communication, especially when it comes to doing things like rallies, getting together to make changes in politics, legislation, running for campaigns. It's a very political app in that way, where you actually can get together and talk about things. It's definitely a place where people go to get information as well as to come together and help, hopefully collaborate and make some positive changes.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a part of it as well.
So I don't know if anybody has, I haven't checked the Facebook. I don't know if there's any chat in there, but I mean, Stasha, do you have any questions or?
No, but I will say that some of the things that we haven't been told really outside of the narrow bubble of nerds is that TikTok itself, which is the reason that this is happening, is because of TikTok. It's not because of ByteDance. I mean, as much as that's how it was worded, it was because
Yeah.
of TikTok. But it was investigated, and it was found to have zero proof from any intelligence agency that TikTok interfered in elections or pushed propaganda or any cause of national security issues. It's a very hypothetical situation that they're pushing through the legislature. And we already know that this happens because Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, in fact, Facebook takes more data than TikTok does, as does Snapchat, just to throw that out there, but they take more data than TikTok does. So a lot of the theory and a lot of this stuff is based off of hypotheticals. And TikTok itself, 4 out of 5 of its board members are American. The CEO is Singaporean, married to an American woman with American children. The investors were Americans. So there was one original investor, Larry Ellison, which you may hear his name come up as it's being discussed. He put in the first investment, venture capital investment, and then he brought in another venture capitalist, but also an American venture capitalist. So the money that TikTok was founded on was all American. And one of the byproducts of this very conversation is, does this mean that American venture capitalists need to not put their money into potential new technology because it could just be taken away from them? So is there already, America is behind China technologically? And so is this going to move us further behind, because now we're talking about American venture capitalists being, just having their investments taken away with no real recourse? Like, no one's going to sell the algorithm for TikTok is gold. It is the best algorithm on any social media app. And I have been on all of them for a long time. And it is by far the best algorithm out of all of them. So they're not going to sell it. They're just not going to. That would be dumb. That would be very dumb of them to do. There's no reason for it. The entire rest of the world is fine and has no problem with it. So it's a lot. It's a lot of money on that front. And the fact is that it is a huge investment and it's $24 billion last year into our economy. It's 7 million small businesses on TikTok. That's not including creators. So people who are independent contractors who make their money, or people who make an extra $200, $500 a month on TikTok that's, helps them pay their rent or keeps the electric on or food or pays for their kids or car insurance or whatever. And that doesn't count at all towards it. So TikTok is really a very American company, from the money invested to the board of directors to the employees. The servers are in the United States. They're in Texas and Virginia, I believe, are the two states that all of the TikTok stuff is housed in. So
Not anymore.
American.
They must have migrated it offshore, or they're in the process of migrating it offshore. I
They
don't know.
might be in the process, but it's been in the States since 2017.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
long before any of this happened, long before there was any controversy or anyone even knew the app existed, really, it's been housed in the US.
Yeah. No, these are some of the implications we're talking about. And you'll find, and this is the great thing. This is why I wanted my friend Stasha on, because I wanted to show you guys that sometimes we can disagree and still love and respect one another and be good friends and colleagues, right? Stasha and I disagree about the national security issues. That's fine. We can
I
read
won't.
the information differently, you
The
know?
only thing that I disagree with is the fact that Facebook is, in fact, a national security threat. We've seen it happen,
Oh, I would say they are for sure too.
and nothing has
Yeah,
happened to them. Whereas nothing
yeah.
happened with TikTok. It has been investigated. All of the intelligence agency has said nothing has happened, that it's all hypothetical. And yet it's the one being banned. Meanwhile, Facebook steals more of your data, sells more of your data, and has been found doing illegal things with your data and pushing propaganda, and no one cares.
Oh, I completely agree with you that, I mean, we could argue that lots of social media is a national security threat in that sense, right? The difference from a legal perspective, coming from me, is so for those of you that don't know me watching live, whatever, I'm a former government lawyer. The difference for me from a legal perspective is that Facebook is an entirely, there's no question it's an entirely American company with American ownership, and which means Facebook has First Amendment rights. TikTok, the company, has First Amendment rights. ByteDance does not. That's the big difference from a legal perspective and why this came out differently, because foreign companies do not have First Amendment rights in the United States. The way you could not enact this same law against Facebook, except perhaps in time of shooting war, maybe. Maybe even then it would be hard to do it with an American company. But it's American companies have rights that foreign companies don't. That's just the way the American law works. It's the way the Constitution works. It's just how it works. So that's why the Supreme Court, and we'll kind of get to some of this in a few minutes, right? The legal situation. It's why the Supreme Court, when they came out unanimously and said the law passes muster on the Constitution, they said this is a very narrowly tailored opinion that applies only to ByteDance and its subsidiaries. They did not want anybody thinking that this opinion was going to apply to anything else. And that's probably how they got unanimity on the opinion. I think if it were broadly tailored, this would have been a much closer 5-4-6-3 case. But they were able to get unanimous by saying we're going to do it just in this category.
Except that it sets the precedent. So whether this case or not, it does set a precedent that, I mean, in a global world where our Congress people don't understand Wi-Fi, making laws,
Or
Congress,
chemtrails or
right, that doesn't understand Wi-Fi, doesn't understand that Singapore is a different country, that it's its own sovereign country. Like, our leaders are humiliatingly dumb. I hate to say that, but it's just true these days. But they don't understand it, and so now they're passing laws and legislation and things that it sets a precedent. So what happens next?
I don't know.
Because it does say that you can do it, right? So now what's
It
to
says
say
you can
that,
do it under this and analogous circumstances.
right? So what's to say that, the US is supporting a coup in some country and decides that that country, everything should be blacked out, right? Or whatever, for whatever. There's a
Well,
million.
hypothetically, the Islamic Republic of Iran could buy Facebook,
Right.
and Facebook would then be functionally banned in the United States. Now, do I think Facebook is going to sell to Iran? No, but right, because then suddenly Facebook is a social media app that's owned and controlled by a foreign adversary.
Yeah. I also just don't think it's a good idea to insulate. I mean, one of the things that this has done is millions of people have flocked to Redbook,
Right,
right?
which, as I said, I'm personally more worried about.
I mean, have you bought anything from Temu? Have you ever been on Facebook? Have you bought anything? Like, China already has your data. Come on. But that said, a whole lot of Americans are finding out that China, our mortal enemy, has advanced technology, universal health care, almost zero homelessness because there are no property taxes, that most people pay a 4 to 7% income tax, and that the wealthy pay more. They have a higher income tax the more wealthy you are. And people are going and looking at their grocery bills, right? Because one of the things that they do on Redbook is their grocery haul
Oh,
videos,
right. Yeah.
right? And so Americans are seeing the corn shipped from the United States to China being sold for less than $1 a pound, where in the United States, on average, it's about $6 a pound. So people are starting to see these things. And then, ironically, again, there's Chinese people going, so our government's tried to propagandize us and tell us that you have to pay for an ambulance. That can't possibly be true. And then Americans are going, yeah, actually, it's about $2,000 for an ambulance starter costs. Right. So it's like all these Americans are finding out that the things that they had been told are false. But then all of these Chinese people are telling us all of these things that they've been told that they can't possibly believe is true are true. And so it's been really quite fascinating to watch the cultural exchange happening. And I think that it's really quite important because gearing up for a war, when you see real people living real lives in very chill, peaceful, we just want to watch cat video ways, makes it a completely different situation.
That's always the thing in war,
Yeah.
right? I mean, anytime you're in a war, the people on the other side, they're just folks who got born and grew up and just want to provide food for their families,
Yeah.
right? What is the quote from the Iliad? War is young men dying and old men talking, or something like that, right? That's always the way it is. And yeah, there are a lot of ways in which, China's I haven't been able to go yet. I need to go. It's just, I'm fascinated by the country and fascinated by the people. I have so many friends of Chinese descent here.
Mhm.
I would love to go and visit. And then, of course, there are things in China that I would not like. I mean, you could literally go to jail because I could say, I don't like Xi Jinping, and they can just arrest you and put you in jail. There's nothing you can do about it. If you're a Uyghur, life is not great in China right now. So
There's not
there.
China's done that is not in the US history
Oh,
or even current
oh,
history. That's the other argument, right?
what
Like
do you mean? Do we have racists in the United States? Have we oppressed the
internment
people because
camps.
of their?
We've never had internment camps here.
No, no, we would never oppress the people because of their ethnicity. Yeah, and I will say my friends who work in the Defense Department have said it's just an open secret in the Pentagon that we're going to be at war in the next 2 or 3 years, and they're all preparing
Right.
for it.
That's the
Mostly because we have a defense pact with Taiwan, and China already has an effective blockade around Taiwan, and they're like, well, then if China invades Taiwan, at that point, do we have to think, do we just give up Taiwan, or do we shoot missiles at them over it? And I don't know what the right answer is. I don't, Taiwan succumbing to Chinese control, I think is not great for us or for the world. And going to war with China is also not great for us or the world. None of it's great. There's no good outcome there.
no, and there's no good answer. But
Yeah,
the isolationism, the resisting cross-cultural exchanges, that's not a good idea either.
right. Well, and the isolationism, I mean, in my mind too, side note, is so much is what goes into we should be defending Europe from authoritarians. And like, these are our democratic allies. Why would we not go to defend? What's the point if we're
Yes.
not going to defend them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, I mean, that's where Stasha and I really come together is the understanding and the exchange and not living in our bubbles, right? Yeah. Oops.
I will say AOC is working on legislation that could make all of this moot. She's working on a data privacy legislation act that would apply to every app, no matter where it's housed, no matter what country it's from, none of that. Like it would be a blanket statement, which can make all of this completely moot.
I would love that, right? Because that's a big problem is TikTok tried to do a national security agreement with the government to avoid all this. Before the legislation was passed, even years ago, they said TikTok basically said we pinky swear we won't give your data to China, and the government was like, we have no way to enforce that. We're just relying on your promise, right? But if we have legally enforceable ways of dealing with that, you're right, it could make the whole thing moot.
Right. And I mean, I personally would like to see that because, as we already know, our American tech companies are selling our data to anyone and everyone that wants to pay
Facebook
them.
gave our data to Vladimir Putin. So, I mean, that's not great.
Yeah. So it's that's the thing as well. Like I see a lot of people talking about, well, I'm so glad I never downloaded TikTok. And I'm like, but you're on Facebook saying that.
Mhm.
And Facebook takes more data than TikTok. So you're saying that, but the fact of the matter is you've given far more data using Facebook than had you signed up for TikTok. So there's this real disconnect in the reality of the situation.
This is great. I'm so glad you're here. It's been no fun if I'm just lecturing at people. All right, so let's look real quickly at the current legal and political situation, which, as everybody sees, is rapidly evolving, even in the last 12 to 18 hours, right? So, a couple things I want to note. The legal situation is fairly clear and settled at this point. There is just not a lot of dispute on the legal situation. We had a unanimous opinion from the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. We have a unanimous opinion from the Supreme Court. The legal situation just is what it is. That's not going
Oh,
anywhere.
you know what? One thing I want to say on that note,
Yeah.
the uh the vote in Congress.
Mhm.
What would you have thought had you heard your senator voted down a humanitarian aid package? You would have been mad at your senator, right? Like, I can't believe you're voting against like this very real fact that people need food and housing and all that kind of stuff. But that was where the TikTok ban was in. So your only options as a congressperson was to vote down a humanitarian aid package and vote down the TikTok ban, or vote against a human or vote for a humanitarian aid package and for the TikTok ban.
Well, and either way you voted, you're going to piss off one constituency or the other.
Right. And at the end of the day, I
Yeah.
can't see many Congress people voting against a humanitarian aid package. Like that would have made
Yeah.
headlines.
This is
It,
also just how Congress does things anymore. This is, again, I need to run a whole separate webinar on how Congress operates nowadays. Everything's in a giant omnibus bill. That's another constitutional amendment I would love to see, is to have a germaneness requirement. I worked in the California legislature for years, and you can't do that. And every subject has to be separated out in separate bills, so you have to vote on it separately in California. And a lot
yeah.
of states do. In the federal government, you could pass all your legislation for the whole year in one bill.
Yeah. And people need to start going, well, that seems like a weird vote. Was it
Mm-hmm.
tied to something else? Was it in
Right.
another thing? Like, instead of just taking things like, oh, they voted down TikTok and they voted for human rights aids, you would never think that that's the same bill, but it is. So when you see votes coming out, you need to not just go, oh, they voted against this one thing. You need to look at where was it in another bill? Was it packaged in something else? Was it, the very last dot point on a major something else? And
Mm-hmm.
see before you take something at face value, because a lot of legacy news media is reporting it as a unanimous Congress bipartisanship vote when that's not really accurate.
Well, that's never accurate.
No, it's not.
I mean, we just did a funding bill a few weeks ago for the government. That funding bill is 1,500 pages long, and you could pick something out and say, "How dare you vote for page 183?" And they're like, "Well, I didn't. I liked the rest of it. What was I supposed to do?" Right?
Exactly. So some of this actually is good in the way that we're new people are learning what you need to be looking at when something is happening legislation wise.
Yeah. So the legal situation, as I said, in the courts is settled. It is what it is now, unless we get new legislation. But for now, absent new legislation, we have a unanimous decision from the DC Circuit and the Supreme Court both, that agree that the legal situation is settled. The political situation is a giant mess right now. A giant mess. Democrats, Republicans, Biden, Trump, and even ByteDance, every party here, they're all like the dog who caught the car. You guys know about that story? The dog who caught, chased the car, then you caught the car in your car, and you're like, oh shit, I caught the car now. Now what do I do? every party here, the politicians, the companies, everybody, it's the Democrats are not pure, the Republicans are not pure, ByteDance and TikTok are not pure. Everybody's made mistakes along the way, and they're all like, "Oh crap, what do we do now?" So every US politician seemed to just assume that ByteDance would sell the app as required by the law. They just all thought ByteDance can pocket a couple $100 billion. Why don't they just pocket the money and sell the app? This is where you get conflicting reporting about whether the Chinese government prevented it or not. My friends who work in national security seem to think the Chinese government did stop the sale. There's other public reporting against that and for that. I don't know the answer. I've not seen the classified briefings, and my friends who have obviously can't show them to me, so I don't know. So everything I have is second or third hand in that respect.
Yeah, everything on this you have to treat as a conspiracy theory. It might be true, it might not be, and you
Might
just
be true, it might not be true. Yeah, exactly. But I have friends who work as legislative liaisons for the Pentagon, and they seem to think China blocked it. But again, I don't know where they can't tell me where they got that information, right? It's not like they could bring the documents home. They go to jail for that. So I don't know.
right. And at the end of the day, the person who owns this very lucrative algorithm has no reason to sell it. They don't need to. Again,
Right.
the rest of the world is using it just fine.
Yeah, it may very well be that it's both, that ByteDance is under both commercial and political pressure not to sell the app. But these are not contradictory things. They can be under pressure from both sides, right? ByteDance, from what I can tell from following the court cases and reading the briefings and listening to their lawyers' press conferences, ByteDance really thought they were going to win the case. I mean, they were convinced they were going to win the case, and I think they were shocked that they did not. They were especially shocked that it was 9-0. Personally, I was not shocked that they lost, having read the briefings, and especially once I saw the DC Circuit opinion. I was like, oh, they're going to lose at the Supreme Court. But, again, people can disagree on the First Amendment issues. There are lots of super smart people on both sides of that. I've listened to both of them, and I don't know entirely what I think. But I was not surprised they lost. ByteDance was surprised they lost, and so nobody had a plan B. The US government did not have a plan B here, and ByteDance nobody had a plan B because everybody thought they were going to win. This is why you've seen, like over the last 12 hours, things changing because nobody had a plan B here. So then, we had the law that TikTok and the TikTok users filed suit saying the law is unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment. The legislation, there was no trial court record here because the Congress wanted there to be expedited review. So they allowed them to go straight to the DC Circuit, which is an appellate level court. As I said, the DC Circuit last month held unanimously that the law does not violate the Constitution. They appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court agreed just 2 days ago, right? Just 2 days ago. They only held the hearings at the Supreme Court 10 days ago, the oral arguments. So for the Supreme Court, that is lightning fast action. This is a court that usually takes years to decide a case. They decided the case. They held the oral hearings within weeks, got the decision out in 10 days. That's lightning fast for them. So the Supreme Court agreed it does not violate the Constitution. So from a strictly legal perspective, again, unless we get a new law, the case is basically over. Now, that doesn't mean everything's over.
No.
That doesn't mean everything's over. That just means from the court's perspective, it's over. The federal courts have washed their hands of the issue. I don't think they want to be involved anymore.
I'd like to see the federal court stock options as well, or the Supreme Court. All of their stock options at this point, frankly.
Well, we all know that all 9 Supreme Court justices are super careful with their ethics and their investments. Right?
They legalized
so careful. I thought it was very telling last year when the Supreme Court wrote a fuck you letter to Congress that it was signed by all 9 justices. So for those who think it's only the other party, it was signed by all 9 justices. Yeah.
Yep.
Including Ketanji Brown Jackson, which I found a little disappointing, but she signed it too.
She broke my heart.
I'm not surprised, right? I'm never surprised by that anymore.
No, I know. I'm not either, but it doesn't hurt. It does hurt a little bit.
Yeah. So what does that mean? So as of today, as of I guess midnight Eastern last night, Apple Android app stores Cannot allow any more TikTok downloads. They can't allow any more TikTok updates. You've all seen the screenshots from the app stores that say that. And not just TikTok, any ByteDance, right? So Lemonade is down. I think there are other minor ByteDance apps that are down as well. Because anything that was subject to the rule by ByteDance is now automatically subject to this. US-based servers can no longer host TikTok, meaning they have to migrate to foreign servers to keep operating the app and the website. Again, the app and the website are allowed to stay operating. You don't have to delete it. They can keep it operating, but they have to migrate to foreign servers. The problem is, absent a very clever VPN, it's going to be very hard to update the app. And then US companies are subject to severe fines if they do not comply. The fine is outrageously massive. It's $5,000 per user. So
More than when they leaked data.
Yeah. So if 50 million users downloaded the app on your app store and you're fined $5,000 per user, we're talking about real money, even for some of these giant corporations all of a sudden.
Yeah. And TikTok has 170 million users. So,
right. So what's that? I'm not even going to do the math. That's a lot of money.
a lot of zeros.
That's hundreds of billions of dollars, right? It's a lot of fines. Do you have any questions about that part, Stasha? I mean, the legal case just is what it is at this point, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, there's nothing to be done about that legal.
no, that's done. The court record is what it is. The factual findings are what they are. That just, I will note one quick thing before I move on. So one difference between the DC Circuit and the Supreme Court, because they were both unanimous. The DC Circuit expressly relied upon classified briefing in their decision. The DC Circuit made it clear that they had seen the classified briefing and they were fairly terrified by what they saw, and that played a big role in it. The Supreme Court said, we are not going to look at the classified briefing. We are going to make our decision on the public record. I like that they did that. And they even pointed out, actually, Justice Gorsuch had a great concurring opinion. I'm not usually a fan of his, but I liked he had a nice concurring opinion in this case, which said it's really important that we did not look at or rely upon the classified briefing because TikTok can't defend itself against a classified briefing. They don't get to see that. So if we're going to make our decision, it has to be transparent on the public record. So the Supreme Court said they were making it on the public record. I thought that was an interesting, I don't know, that's a legal nerd distinction, maybe. But yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is at this point legally.
It is legally. Now, politically, it isn't what it is because we don't know what it is.
Right.
Politically, it's very confusing. So Joe Biden did not want to be blamed for enforcing the law. So he handed it off to Trump and said, I'm not going to enforce the law because it's a holiday weekend. Now, in case you're wondering, that's not how the law works.
What?
Right?
Purge.
That's right. It's the purge. It's a holiday. We can rob banks. We can do whatever we want. It's the holiday weekend. Yeah, so that's not how the law works. So that was just a complete cop out by Biden. Whatever, he's on his way out at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Trump also does not want to be blamed for the ban, so he says he's considering delaying the requirements of the legislation for 90 days. Now, the big question then is, can he actually do that? And the answer is kind of maybe or maybe not. I'm not sure. It's not clear whether he can do that. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. So the law does allow the president to delay the ban by up to 90 days if there is a contract in place for a pending sale of TikTok. And they're just trying to work out the details. There is no contract in place for a pending sale, which means that 90-day delay does not apply by law. The president does not have that authority. So he literally doesn't have the legal authority to do a 90-day extension. His alternative, which he originally was saying last week he was going to do the 90-day extension of the law. Now he's just saying he's going to issue an executive order that says we won't enforce it for 90 days. So he could do that. He's basically just telling the Justice Department, don't enforce the law. Now, Can we all see why there's problems there too? Do we like the idea of a president just picking which laws he wants to enforce and not? And even if you might agree with him on this, he might do it next time on something you really don't like. So that's also problematic. So we really need Congress to step in. If Congress wants to fix it, Congress has to fix it. The
Yeah.
president has very little real legal authority in this matter. Now, meanwhile, we have Apple and Google and Oracle and all the rest of the US companies that are now facing legal consequences. These are very conservative folks. They do not like legal liability. They have to answer to shareholders at their annual meetings. These are very conservative people. So the legal departments in these corporations are telling them, you have to comply with the law. Even if Trump says he's not going to enforce it, you have to comply with it. Why? Because he could change his mind, and then all of a sudden we owe a $1 billion fine.
Mhm.
So that's why, even though TikTok is still running on your phone, which it is allowed to do under the law, that's why the website's still operating, which is allowed to do under the law. You cannot get downloads and updates on the app stores because these legal departments are telling their CEOs, you cannot risk this. Your your head will be cut off, your head will roll if you get this wrong. And you can't go wrong with complying with the law. And now, meanwhile, we have Congress wondering whether they should amend the legislation. And that's sort of the big debate in Congress right now, because this really, as much as Trump has said he's going to do things, it's not clear. Well, it is fairly clear he doesn't really have the legal authority to do it. So this needs to be done by Congress. Congress has to step in if there's going to be a delay to force a sale, or as you said, Stasha, AOC's legislation that would provide enforceable data protections on all apps, not discriminating against anybody. This ultimately is going to require Congress to step in. And we all know that Congress is so good at agreeing on controversial things right now, coming together.
No.
Yeah. Oh, Branislav, how's it going, my friend?
Um, I, I'm listening and wondering, that's kind of very, very, for my perspective, it's, how to say it? It's, do you guys remember Lieutenant Colombo? How I summarize all our now representation, constitution is who was old enough and remember these movies was
the police detective Columbo?
correct.
Yeah.
Follow the money,
Yeah.
Everything finally finish. But now open completely different discussion, and I'm not gonna confuse situation even more. It's very sad for me, that everything in this country, becoming money, decision made by on that principle.
Mm-hmm.
And money is a fiction. Money is not a natural human law here.
Money has value because we agree it does.
Correct. But what to do, it's gonna have consequences.
It's where we are. Yeah.
And that.
Oops. Oh, sorry. I think I unmuted him too quick. I'm sorry about that, Branislav. Stasha, so would you like to talk a little bit about what people can learn for this and what do we do with our businesses and how do we help our clients? And
yeah, this is the thing that I don't think people are quite putting together, is that this isn't just, oh, this app doesn't exist anymore. It's $24 billion in the US economy. It was set to double, if not triple, in 2025. It's 170 million users. A lot of them make money on that app, and all of them are losing their revenue, job, income in the same day.
Right.
So we may have a week or two while the app still functions as they're moving the servers and all that stuff, but it will quickly cease to function. So it's a huge and an already struggling economy that doesn't seem to be getting any better. The current new incoming administration doesn't seem that to be doing anything that will help boost the economy. We'll see. I mean, fingers crossed, but it doesn't look like that it'll be doing anything to help the economy. So far, the legislation is just to give billionaires more tax breaks, but we'll see. So that means that the people who buy from you're not on TikTok. You have nothing to do with TikTok, but the people who buy your product don't have any money now. They've lost their income. They've lost their secondary income. They've lost their side hustle. They just don't have the money to buy anything outside of groceries and housing at this point, which is already a struggle bus for a lot of Americans. So we have an ever increasing homelessness rate, an ever increasing medical debt, an ever increasing bankruptcy. Like everything is just getting worse and worse. So this is going to cause an enormous economic change, whether you use the app or care about the app at all. So your clients may not be able to be your clients anymore because they can't afford you. They can't, all of these things are happening. So it's going to be one of those ripple effect things that may very likely affect you, whether you think it will or not. It also could potentially be affecting your clients, right? You have clients that have used TikTok for their marketing. And I mean, I don't know if we all remember this, but Facebook and Instagram Meta has gone dark more than once over the years where the apps just disappeared for 24 hours. And if your marketing is entirely based off of one platform, as we now know, any platform can go dark. Any platform can be caught up in a scandal. Any platform can be fined. That's all happened to Facebook.
Yeah.
Now we also see an app being banned. So it's something that you're putting all of your eggs in one basket is not a great idea. And social media's marketing is only one of hundreds of marketing tools out there. So this is the situation where what are you doing to divest your marketing, to divest your income streams?
Diversify.
What's that?
Diversify.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Diversify. So what are you doing so that you're not, having all of that one thing in that one place? Now, a lot of the people on TikTok have been pointing people to their YouTube channels, to their Instagrams, to RedNote, to other places in order to, keep their communities. And that's another thing, is that a lot of our clients are going to be losing their communities. A lot of people have used TikTok because, again, the algorithm is so danged good. It is a place where you can book talk, cook talk, witch talk, nerd, you name it. There's a community for it, right? There's a menstrual health community for it. I get a lot of the other countries doing research on endometriosis, menstrual disorders, all these sorts of things off of TikTok because they're not on the United States social media apps. There's not a lot of talk. What you see on Instagram has been pulled off of TikTok almost every time. What you see on Facebook has been pulled off of TikTok. The international networks, right? So there's a lot of education, there's a lot of community, and all of that is very quickly being pulled out from underneath people. So a lot of people are that safety, that security, that community that has helped people. There's one follower or one person that I follow on TikTok who lived in a state as a trans person that went through and did all of the trans bans and the bathroom things and everything and fundraised off of TikTok, just asking the community help them move and get to a state that was safe for them to live in. So a lot of people have used TikTok for their safety, right? I live in a blue state right next to Texas. We have a lot of people who have used TikTok to ask, hey, is New Mexico a safe place for me as a trans person, as an LGBT person, as a woman who can give birth, as a person who can get pregnant? So a lot of this stuff.
I live in California. People are flying here from all over the country to get medical care and things that they can't anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of that is arranged on lots of different social media, including TikTok.
Yes. And a lot of those same people who are running for office are used TikTok to fundraise at a grassroots level. So having our first women in Congress, those kinds of things, those took a lot of grassroots effort. It was very hard. And we had this one platform where you could really fundraise and you could actually have, our first trans congressperson elected because they had a platform that was supportive. And this is just a little side thing, but a lot of people who are on TikTok, and if this is your community or your clients, it's a kinder app. There's not nearly as much, like you post something and the hate comments that you get on Facebook. I mean, at least if you're a woman or a minority of any kind, you almost immediately get somebody who is saying something nasty to you, and then usually your DMs, and but it doesn't happen on TikTok that way. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not nearly as often or as much of an avalanche, right? So a lot of people use TikTok as their safe app because it was the one place that they could go be themselves, honestly, and not have that fear or that immediate backlash. And yes, of course it does happen, but it's not nearly as much. So there's a lot of people who are losing their safe place. There's a lot of people who are losing their income. There's a lot of people who are losing both. And there's a lot of people who are trying to make change, local school boards, local government, local elections that are losing their ability to network and come together and get that kind of thing done. So we as coaches are going to very likely need to help our clients find a different safe space, find a different way that they can have that comfort and
compassion, right? I mean, with like a person like, as you know, I don't use TikTok. That's my choice based on my knowledge of things. It's not for me. I'm someone who approved of the so-called ban, but so many of my clients use it. And what am I supposed to do? Say, screw you. It's no. These people relied on this. These are people I love and care about. They're my community. It's my job to help them with compassion and empathy and love to figure out how to move forward, right? I mean, that's otherwise, what are we here for?
Yeah, exactly. And help those people who now have no income or have had their income slashed find ways to make that connection again so that they can again get back on their feet. And that's, client attraction, marketing, and not just social media client attraction, not just marketing on social media. There's a whole plethora of ways to do it outside of that. And another thing that I don't think people are realizing is that as part of that backlash, people are disconnecting their Meta accounts. Like a lot of people are disconnecting their Meta accounts. So Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of apps, the people on them are aging and they will continue to age. New young people are not signing up for them.
Call me old, Stasha?
Yeah, I've been on it for like 20 years. I'm calling myself old. But no, young people will not sign up for it. And the mid ages are deleting. And people are also calling to boycott businesses that sell ads, give money to Meta by doing ads on Facebook and TikTok or on Instagram. So you may even see backlash, like your Facebook community is getting smaller or your ads are costing a lot more to reach. And then the people who are staying, like myself, have disabled all of the tracking, have disabled all of the history of tracking. I went through and did all of the backlog, have disconnected everything. So nothing's linked to Facebook anymore.
I did that a long time ago because as an attorney, I can't have it looking up my legal clients' contacts. I just can't. That's so I did that. I teach a whole class on that. Speaking of, yeah.
Well, the rest of the world is catching up to you now, Ian. And a lot of people, I mean, I've had my stuff disconnected for a while as well, but I did go back and I didn't realize that there was a history that was there as well and deleted that. Now, I don't really care. Like, I don't care if China has my data. I don't care if Google has my data. Frankly, I want my ads to be pretty shoes because that's what I want my ads to be. So I'm always the one going like, hey, can my ads be some cute boots this week? Thanks. Like, I'm all for it. I like my ads to be, what I want them to be. But because of this, because of the meddling and the money that Zuck has been doing, I was like, okay, I can't leave. I have family, international friends, those kinds of things. I don't want to leave. but it's not on my phone. It's not something I'm going to check in on every day. I'm moving my business communities off of Facebook. We're no longer going to have Facebook groups. We're going to move to a different app that's not a social media app. We're not going to be doing stuff on that, and no more ads. And you may see that your ads on those things are costing a lot more money, that the people who are signing up are not really your target audience. So like maybe you have an ad to something and you had a nice 70% conversion rate on it, but now your conversion rate's plummeting. It could be very likely because of this,
Oh,
because of,
and that's not even just now, just over the last 6 months, I've noticed my ads are more expensive than converting less on Facebook. I mean, it just, now part of that may have been the election and political season,
yeah,
but still.
yeah, it's and that's the other thing, is that is your target audience people who are politically motivated? Like, are they people who want to see money out of politics? Are they people who want to see climate change, want universal health care, want these things because they're looking at Zuckerberg putting all of this money into the opposite? And now they're looking at the people who are paying for ads on these platforms and going, but you're giving this man money. I'm not going to do business with you. Right? Like, people are more and more aware of how they're spending their money. And are they looking at people on these platforms and going, I just don't want to do business with people who are giving that man money anymore.
I get it.
Right?
All, but I mean, it sounds like, lessons we can learn moving forward. I mean, we agree, diversify, right? You have to diversify your client outreach, your marketing, and everything. If you rely on one platform or two platforms, I'm even just reminded just now, like my entire email list is on Aweber. And Aweber, in case you're listening, I love you. You've been great to me for years and years. I have no problem. Not planning on leaving. You've been great, right? But I'm thinking Aweber could cancel my account tomorrow. There's nothing I do about that. So
Yeah.
I need to be better about every few weeks downloading my email list off of Aweber, even just in case. What if they go dark? What if their servers break down? What if they get mad at me because I said shit too many times? I don't know. I mean, it's,
I have a
you
monthly
know,
alert, and it's something that I teach in the school as well, peer coaching school, to have a monthly alert to download your email list and then back up your hard drive.
oh, there you
Every
go.
month we have this process where we download our email list, we download anything we need, and then we put it and we back up our hard drive onto an external or some other source. So there's this monthly, just in case, because again, Facebook has gone dark for days. And
Yeah.
I knew people when that happened that were in the middle of launches, and their
Mhm.
entire launch fell apart in 24 hours because of that.
Yeah. And then make sure you have a way to capture client information from your social media, right? I don't care if you're on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, right? You have to have opt-ins, legal opt-ins. You don't just steal people's information, but you have a way that you can send stuff out that says, if you want to keep working with me and hear from me, here's so we can opt in. You can capture their cell phones, their email, that sort of stuff. Because then again, as you said, Stasha, there were a lot of people on TikTok who were like, oh shit, I think this is real. They realized a few months ago, especially actually when the DC Circuit opinion hit a month, 6 weeks ago, they were like, oh crap, this is happening. They started capturing it. Other people started doing it last April when the legislation came down. Some people just lived in denial that this is not real. It's really not going to happen until today. And they're like, oh my God, I lost all my client data.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to have a way to capture that because anything you have could be shut down at any moment. The only constant in the world is change, especially in the age of technology. The apps are going to come and go and come and go and come and go. Maybe TikTok is reinstated and we all love it. Maybe 2 years from now, we've all forgotten about it. And there's I mean, right?
Well, I mean,
That
just
could happen.
look at Twitter and what's happening.
Oh,
Like, it's
yeah.
plummeted. And that was like the most widely used social media app for a long time. And then the algorithm changed with the ownership.
For reasons.
Yeah. And people have deleted and deleted and deleted and deleted their accounts until it's a shadow of the social media app it used to be.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say some big takeaways are diversify.
Mhm.
Make sure you have a way to keep your client lists off of social media or email. Download the stuff like Stasha said, back it up, download it, give people chances to opt in, lots of chances with lots of free stuff, right? We're big fans of free, valuable opt-ins to get people on your list. I shouldn't say to provide value for them, and the side benefit is you get people on your list. How about that? Right? And then just remember that things are going to change. And if you're stuck in one mode of being, you can advance or die. You can adapt or die. That's life on Earth for the past 4 billion years is adapt or die. I mean, look where'd the dinosaurs go, right? They couldn't adapt, so they died.
They're chickens now.
They're chickens now. They're now chickens. We now eat them, and they're delicious.
And they're
Sorry
$5
for my
at
vegan
Costco.
friends. Yeah, I love me that roast chicken at Costco. Oh boy, the things I can do with that. Yeah,
Me too. Me and the dogs. We get two. One for us, one for them.
I love it. I love it. So then I did want to, say, folks, I have something going on. My beautiful wife, Heather, and I, Stasha knows my wife, Heather, and I, when did we meet? This was way pre-COVID, 2018, 2017, going, I don't know.
Yeah. Back in the day, that's for sure.
Back in the day, doesn't it seem like it? Back in the day when TikTok was not a thing,
That's
right?
right.
So that's how long ago this was, which is funny because it wasn't that long ago. But my wife Heather and I, we now run a daily accountability program, and so we've had some folks in that. We decided that we had to. This goes back to me. Have you guys heard of the Johns Hopkins Change or Die study? Stasha, have you heard of that? Yeah, it's not called the Change or Die study. That's just what it's become known as that. They followed medical patients for 10 years with life-threatening diseases. And they followed two groups. The one group, they said, you have to change this about your life or you're going to die, and you're going to do it on your own. Most of them died. They would rather die than change on their own. Then they had the group that had daily accountability. They lived because they did it together. So this is why Heather and I, for a little while now, have been running this daily accountability group. It's called Empowered Business Habits. Empowering because we're empowering ourselves, business because most of us are small business owners, and habits because I'm trying to take the power back of the word habits. Doesn't habit feel like a dirty word, like you're smoking or drinking or doing cocaine? No, habit is a powerful word if you're seeing it in a positive manner. So it's called Empowered Business Habits, and anybody here can go to empoweredbusinesshabits.com if you want to check it out. It's a monthly subscription that you can join or cancel at any time. Literal daily accountability. Every weekday morning, we get together. We're doing this together. We get on, we say, what did you do yesterday? Celebrate your wins from yesterday. Talk about your goals for today, right? And talk about your questions for today. And with all this change in the world, don't we need that sort of daily accountability and help more than ever? So celebration from yesterday, goals for today, and then we get on tomorrow and we're like, how did you do? And there's no shame or no blame. Oh, you didn't accomplish your goals yesterday. It's like, no, if you didn't, why not? And how can we help? And how can we support one another? And then every Friday we get together and we do a weekly review. We do some more goal setting for the next week. We do instruction. The Fridays are very fluid right now, instruction on topics of interest and all that. So www.empoweredbusinesshabits.com. Sorry, for anyone who wants to check it out. So, but I appreciate everybody showing up today. And Stasha, do you have any more to add on? I was just going to tell you, can you please put in your, literally just going to say,
I have two things that I think will help. I have a ton of free stuff I've made over a decade of doing this work.
Yeah.
So two things that I think would be very helpful for you, for your clients, especially if you need to, get into some different things, is I have a client attraction checklist. Mm-hmm. And this is ways of bringing in clients that one is social media. The rest is everything else. And then the other one is marketing in alignment. And this is something that is based off of the idea that we don't have to be sleazy to sell. We can actually market from a very heart-centered space that is focused on improving your people's lives, right? So if you're struggling with how am I going to make money now? What am I going to do if I get off of social media? I don't know how am I going to find clients? How am I going to make business? How am I going to market? One or both of these, they really do go hand in hand, could be really helpful in helping you to get off of just social media as your income generating stream, help market in some other ways, and do it in an ethical way that feels really good. So you don't have to sell your soul in order to market. You don't have to be sleazy. You don't have to lie or scare or traumatize people in order to make a dollar. So two things I think can be really helpful for people. So one's a checklist, really nice and easy, and the other one has a few emails that will help you figure out your marketing thing. And I will say the marketing one is for my people, so there's a menstrual cycle element to it. But anyone can use it. There's a ton of good tips and tricks in it. And for anyone who's
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen her marketing for that, and I don't teach menstrual cycle stuff, but the basic format that she uses is stuff you can modify for what you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have men that have used it, and some of them go, you know what? I do it with the moon phases and I do the same process. And some go, I just do it.
You just do it. There you go. If you guys are not on Stasha's list, you need to be. She's one of my favorite people from back in the day, so I appreciate her being there. Definitely get one of her freebies, or both her freebies. And so Stasha, so I have those links in the chat. I'm also going to make sure they're posted below the Facebook and the YouTube replays and everything. So
perfect. And send me your link so that when I send out the replay to my list, I can put your link in there.
Okay. Yes. And Chelsea was just asking.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chelsea, for the reminder to drop that in there as well. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was great. Perfect. And then I'll pop that in with the replay as well.
All right. Very good. So yeah, I'll post it on my YouTube channel. You are more than welcome to post it on yours and any other channels as well. We both have the recordings, and I think it's important to talk about this stuff. This is the thing is the TikTok. It seems like a niche issue, but it's not really a niche issue. The law, the politics, the business, the client stuff, the personal stuff. It's something it affects everybody, and it's not it's not a one-off issue. This issue has happened before and it will happen again. And so we have to be able to stay calm, to ground, to remember that we're safe and okay. And even if we made mistakes and wish we had done things differently, that means there are no mistakes. I should say there are no mistakes. There are only lessons to learn to move forward so we can do things better next time so it doesn't have the same effect, because this will happen again. It's just a matter of time. This will happen again. And so if you wish you had done things differently, now's your chance to do things differently going forward. If you're happy with how you've done it and it worked, then keep doing it. I mean, the world is just
yeah, and go get off of social media. Go touch grass. Just, one of the things that I think I hope people take away from all of this is to just get off the scroll a little bit more, go experience life a little bit more, and be a little more mindful of it. Go seek out different cultures, go seek out different opinions, go seek out different countries and people and communities. Go try to get out of your own insular bubble and see more people and more cultures and more of the world.
No, I love it. Get outside. This is why I live half time in the mountains and half time on the water. I get the best of both worlds. I get to be outside. I get to walk my puppy outside. I get to ground with the fresh air. And some of it, if you're not sure, for me as a foodie, if you're not sure how to seek out new cultures, go to new restaurants. Right? New ethnic restaurants you haven't been to, but go to an Ethiopian restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
One of
my favorites right there. You just nailed it. That's where
we go. Ethiopian is great. Peruvian is one of my favorite dishes. Georgian food. We have a new Georgian restaurant in town, and I've paid them thousands of dollars already because I can't stop eating there. Who thought Georgian food was so good? I had no idea it was a thing, right? Uzbek food. Now we were eating Uzbek food. I mean, go eat, because you meet people who are from those places. It's a great experience. Yeah, go for it.
I love it. Thank you so much for hosting.
All right. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you. Love everybody who's watching today. Take care, everybody.